Okay, guys, we did it again. I'm even on time, shockingly. So I'm so excited. My friend Ron Jackson's going to be here in a couple minutes. And as you know, he's the leader of the domain industry, the publisher of DN Journal, domain name journal, dnjournal.com, who has documented the entire domain name industry since the beginning, all of the conferences, all of the largest domain name sales, all of the most interesting people. And he's got quite a story and a background. And we're really excited that Ron's going to be with us momentarily. You can pull up the information on Facebook about Ron's background, as you can see. And one second. Still setting up my equipment here, and we're letting a few people join the live stream. After this, after Ron, we're gonna have Glen of Child Rescue Coalition, which is an awesome charity that develops the tools and software to help police departments find predators online and help save children, obviously. So he's an awesome guy after Ron. When we're done with that, we're gonna do live domain name training like we always do. So I'm really excited that you guys are here with me today. So give me 1 second here. So we're going to do some live domain name training at the moment, and then Glenn and Ron are going to join us afterwards. If you guys have any particular domains you need appraised, as long as they're awesome domains, you can add them to the list, but it's better if we just do really valuable ones. So I'm going to pull up some of the valuable ones on my own list, and we can appraise them together. It's really a training session to teach you how to fish as opposed to fishing for you. And just keep in mind that there's these appraisal tools out there in the world that are using bots and algorithms to attempt to appraise domains. And they're really counterproductive because they're giving you just sort of random information. It's really hard for me, a great domain appraiser, to manually appraise domains with a bunch of tools and a bunch of help, which means a bot couldn't possibly do that job. And therefore, the results that it spits out are not helpful ultimately. So we'll do a few domain name appraisals, and if somebody knows where Ron Jackson is, they can check on him for us. But luckily, I have a list of killer domains here, and we're going to pull up some appraisals. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of a slow start this morning, but I'm going to ramp it up any moment. Okay, Howard, thank you. Use tires.com. Hazrat has mindinitiative.com. That sounds pretty good. Steven has 2VI. Devam has Cookar4U. That's a crappy one, I think, because I don't know what it means. If I don't know what it means, it can't be that great. So let's talk about the process of appraising a domain. We're breaking it down into 3 parts. What we're doing is, first, we're disambiguating it to figure out what it means and understand it. Try to understand if it's a relevant commercial expression that's spelled properly, that's meaningful, and therefore it's worth more than $0. Next, we're trying to figure out the breadth of the domain. And after that, we're trying to figure out the depth. So the breadth is how many companies or people might want to buy it. And the depth is who is the best buyer and how much could they conceptually pay for it. That's where the real action is. So you guys, thank you. You put a lot of good domains up there for me to appraise. Now that we know the process, we're going to do that. And some of you guys are going to call Ron Jackson for me and make sure he didn't set his alarm wrong or something. This is from like a Seinfeld episode, I think. The guy missed the Olympics because he set his alarm wrong. This is the domain name Olympics. So we're going to go in order. Hazrat was first. Smartest guy. The early bird gets the worm. We're going to appraise mindinitiative.com. First thing I'm going to do is share my screen with you guys. Bam. I think I'm going to. Hold on a sec. Chrome tab, new tab, share. All right, we're in business. So we do everything Boolean because Google's such a terrible app that it forces us to use Boolean because it doesn't want us to get the results we're looking for. So unfortunately, it ignores my capital letters also, which is a big problem. And also it really ignores the quotes in the sense that it will add punctuation in the middle of my expression, even though I'm explicitly not asking for that. So this pull down thing has some information too that we can sort of use to get some context around the domain. Again, right now we're trying to find out what it means. This is backwards. Initiative mind meeting. Mind initiative, you pen. So that's something. So we'll look into that a little further. Again, what does it mean? It looks like UPenn is the winner here, the Mind Initiative, Molecular Integration in Neurological Diagnosis. It's a mouthful. It's an awesome name, though. There's a Mind Initiative in Bucharest. You know, the Wharton School is actually at the University of Penn where Trump went to. Presumably he paid somebody to get through it all and never really went to class or qualified, I'm guessing, but maybe he did. Who the hell knows? Peace of Mind Initiative, Mind Initiative on aging. Okay, so as far as what it means, you know, it means a little bit of something to some people. The breadth is that it means a little bit of something to some people, and the depth that is that it means a lot to one person, which is the University of Pennsylvania. We'll look at some images to see if there's additional meaning here. There's my buddy Ron. What's up, my man? We're gonna finish this domain appraisal and going out of order here. So Mind Initiative, very cool, all over the place. So there's a really good name. It means something to some people. It has a little bit of depth to a little bit of people, and it's worth $10,000. What else can I tell you? I'll post it, and then we're going to talk to Ron a little while. We're going to talk to Glen, and then we're going to do more domain names. Okay. Remove that and add. Ron, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you. You know, I was in your virtual green room, and I looked at the clock and I said, you know what? Maybe I'm supposed to hit this enter studio button. So I don't know if I should have been waiting. And so I got to lodge a complaint right away. There were no virtual treats nor virtual drinks in the virtual green room. So
you're supposed to have a list. Your agent's supposed to have a list of demands. Like,
I know, yeah. You know, like the rock bands would, they tell the arenas they had to have only certain colored M&Ms in the plate and that sort of thing. But I'm not that difficult yet. I'm probably getting there.
You know, it actually sounds like a kind of a good idea. You could have people like be delivered something from FedEx right before their Zoom calls. Like, here's your pad and paper and some coffee, and let's have an awesome Zoom call. And here's where you sign on the dotted line, you know?
You know, Amazon is building a big local fulfillment center about 1 mile east of us, and they're talking about you order something, within the hour it's going to be on your doorstep if you're within a 3 mile radius of this new fulfillment center. It's not like the giant warehouses. We have one of those in Tampa also, but these are new things they're doing. But the size of the thing is still mind-boggling just to serve a 3 mile radius. That looks like a $50 million project. Just amazing stuff. But they could do exactly what you're talking about. You just came up. I'm starting to think of domains related to that. 1 hour delivery to people who are going to be on Zoom calls. That's a great idea.
There you go. There's probably, you know, it's, merging the land and the internet, you know, is an old concept that I think Amazon is already the master of.
No doubt. Hey, by the way, where are you today? I see the sun in the background. Are you in Delaware or are you in Florida?
I'm in Boca.
In Boca. That looks like a nice day over. We're, of course, on the other coast outside Tampa, and we finally got some gorgeous fall weather.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really nice here at the moment. It's been raining for like a month, I think, but
Yeah.
it's still really windy. It's sort of too windy to go out almost, but it's really nice temperature though.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
Cool. So thanks again for coming. What I want to do is do your family background, your business background, and then current events. And you can tell me about rock and roll and journalism.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Well, I grew up, actually, you and I have something in common. We're both from Delaware. The difference is you're home base for a long time, Delaware State, and I'm from a little town in central Ohio called Delaware. There was an Indian tribe across the Northeast. So there are lots of Delawares. There's a Delaware County in Pennsylvania. But anyhow, I'm from Delaware, Ohio. It's a small college town about 25 miles north of Columbus. It's a great place to grow up. When I lived there or grew up, we had about 30,000 people, one high school. All the families knew each other. So it's all very cool. Came from a working class family. My dad was a blue collar worker, had come up from Appalachia in the 1930s from West Virginia, and initially worked on farms for $1 a day. That's what they made for a hard labor all day. But they came up to get jobs in the factories, which he did, and he did well. Eventually became a foreman in a local factory. But that had a big influence on what I decided I wanted to do with my life. My dad never complained, raised a family of 4 boys, but he would say every now and then that he couldn't wait until he could retire so that he could do what he wanted to do. And to me, I always felt kind of sad about that because he's in his 30s, strong guy, and he couldn't wait till he was an old man to do what he wants to do. So I said, you know what? And I'm probably 10, 12 years old. I said, whatever I do in life, it's going to have to be something that I love to do. And I'm not going to worry about the money part of it. I'd be happy if I don't care if I'm renting a bedroom in someone's house, I'm going to do what I love to do. So the problem I had is I didn't have any talent to speak of. I loved music. And we were talking about music, and I love sports, like all teenage boys love girls, but that doesn't pay very well. The music and the sports could, if you were good at it, but I was neither of those. So going into my senior year in high school, I still had no idea what I was going to do. But one day in the summer before senior year, I did play amateur baseball in high school, and the local radio station would do an interview with whoever, say, had the game-winning hit after the game. So I got to be on with the local radio guy. And after one of those sessions, he said, you have a good voice. Do you ever think about going into radio? And I said, my ears perked up. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, they've started a new broadcasting school in Columbus. And he said he recommended it. It was that they had hired local professional broadcasters to teach kids. So I enrolled there because I thought, okay, I can go on the radio and talk about music, play records. I can talk about sports, do sports casting. So I learned all that in broadcasting school, and his radio station ended up hiring me. So that started me out. That's how I got started in the business world as a teenager.
I will unmute. I was trying to show off my Chris Cornell shirt.
Yeah, I like it. That's nice.
It's hard to get it centered in the thing.
Right.
But I heard your story, and I appreciate your story. I do live in Delaware part-time my whole life, but I'm technically from Washington, D.C., not too far away.
I remember that from the first cover story we did on UNDN Journal, which was back, the year we started was January 1st, 2003, and you were one of the first year cover stories when we started that whole tradition. And
Right.
in fact, I reviewed that this morning. Yeah, I was talking, going back through it and refreshing my memory from how you got your start with an internet service provider in Washington, D.C. So I remember all that background. There's some things that I've learned about you since then that we'll talk about as we go along here about your fascination with drums, and that'll kind of figure into our music discussion. I think we'll talk a little bit about. You do have
the best radio voice, and you are the only real journalist that I know. So what I'd recommend is that the next time you interview me on my live stream, this time I interview you.
I'm actually going to sneak some questions in on you, so it's probably
Okay.
going to go both ways this time as well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have Glen on in a little while, so we're
Yep.
going to
You
have to
can.
do another one in a
Yep.
little while. But
Yeah,
we're
absolutely. You can send me off there anytime you
Well,
want to.
I don't want to send you off. I can talk to you for hours, but I just don't want. I just
Yep.
promised everybody Glenn was going to come on also.
Yep.
So in any event, we're going to talk for a little while.
Yep.
But back just to finish off your background and then talk about DN Journal and then whatever else you want. So you work for ABC and some big name stations, and then when you realized that our domain industry didn't have a voice, certainly not a professional voice, you decided to be that voice. And from everybody's perspective, you've been that voice ever since the beginning. And here we are, whatever, 20 years later, after domain trading started.
Yeah, well, the way that progression went, I mentioned I started at my hometown radio station, and I had a very inauspicious debut. If you've been in a radio station, you know they have the console in front of you, and when you start a record, you switch off your microphone. You had your microphone off while you're doing some things there. So I was in probably the first week in the studio, and I was like 19 years old. And I had this bad habit of when I would start a record, I would lean back in the chair and put my feet up on the edge of the console. And I did that one day, and my chair went over backwards. And you hear this huge crash in the studio, and I jump up and I'm swearing a blue streak. And because I'm just like, I hit my head and I knocked record stacks everywhere. And as all this is going on, the general manager comes rushing into the studio, and I look up at him. He looks over the console, reaches down and turns my mic off. I had forgotten to turn the mic off. So this is went out all over the air. And fortunately, the guy said, well, he's a kid, he's just learning, and he let me slide. And fortunately, we became pretty good friends from that.
Well, luckily, it's before the age of Jeffrey Toobin.
Yeah, exactly. So I got drafted before, I think it was there a year and a half. I went into, and the Army fortunately put me on Army Radio TV in Augusta, Georgia at Fort Gordon. One of the 6 guys in that office was Steve Croft, whose name you know from 60 Minutes. I've known Steve since he had just come out of Syracuse University.
So cool.
Yep, he had just graduated from Syracuse, so we were all young guys in that office. After the Army, back to Ohio, but having been in Georgia where it's nice and warm and loving the weather, I decided I wanted to go south. So I learned that this group in Sarasota, Florida had just started a new ABC TV station, and they also had a radio station. So they had an opening for a DJ, a newscaster, but they paid half in Florida what they do up north. They pay you in sunshine, and they still do today for the most part. So I said, look, I would take the radio job for less money because I also had an offer in Pennsylvania at the time. But you got to let me work in your new TV station one day a week, and I'll do anything you want me to do. So they said, yeah, we'll find something for you to do. Come on down. So cool. I went down, got the radio job. My first TV job was in between the 6 and 11 o'clock news. They would rent the studio out to local organizations to film commercials and things, or even short programs. And there was a local mobile home park that took a half hour to have these old people square dancing to try to sell mobile homes. So my job was on the studio camera doing this square dancing. And I'm going, man, this is not what I really dreamed of as my break into TV. But fortunately, having been on radio, they let me start filling in on the TV station, doing weather, news, sports. Finally, the sportscaster left. I got the job I wanted. Had some great years in Sarasota, then moved up the road to Tampa, had another nice stretch there, 83 to 89. And by 89, I wanted to, this whole love of music came back to me, and I wanted to start my own business. So a year before I left Channel 13 in Tampa, I started a record store called Rock Island. In fact, we had all of our own merchandise. We had beach bags and T-shirts and sweatshirts and coffee mugs. I'm wasting my time here because I don't have any merchandise anymore left to sell, but just wanted to show you, we had a whole chain of record stores around Tampa. So I loved all those 12 great years. And then the internet came in and wiped out all of the record stores, even Tower Records, Sam Good, they all went down, as you know, because of CD burning came in. And also there was Napster came along. You could download the music. So no one was going in the stores anymore. So now I'm searching for something to do. And one day, it was 2002, I was leafing through a computer magazine, PC World, and there was a full-page ad in there that Newstar, who was the .us registry, and still is, though they just sold the registry operations to GoDaddy. But anyhow, Newstar put, I think the only ad I've ever seen for .us they were promoting. And I looked at that and I go, you know, when I got my domain name for my stores, which was musicparadise.com, I had a hard time finding a domain even in 97. The store name was actually Rock Island, as you saw on the merchandise, but Rock Island was already taken.com. So I thought maybe this .us thing would be something. So anyhow, I started searching on Google and I stumbled upon DN Forum, and these people are talking about buying and selling domain names. That's where I saw your name for the first time and learned about what you had done and got even more interested in it. So in that search for information, I couldn't find any resources. There were no magazines. In music, we had Billboard magazine. Broadcasting had Broadcasting magazine. So since I couldn't find it, I said, well, I've always been a journalist. I'll start one. And that's how DN Journal came about. And like I said, New Year's Day of 2003 is when we started. So we'll be hitting our 18th year here in 2021.
It's very impressive. So what questions do you want to ask me, and how can people make money today on domain names? And then like 5 minutes, we're going to add Glen.
Okay. Well, one thing I was going to ask you that I didn't ask you in that first cover story and learn later is that you were a drummer. You collect drums. They were all over the place. I just wondered how you got into that particular instrument, and are you still really active in that?
Yes, sir. Well, that's relatively easy. I just smashed on pots and pans and tables and desks and pens and pencils until my parents bought me drums.
So was that out of anger or just you like the rhythmic thing?
No, actually, there was always music playing everywhere. You know, it's like my family had a lot of music. Actually, I was just really blessed. Washington, D.C. and Bethesda, the neighborhood I was from, the kids I knew were tons of great, skilled, trained musicians. I was a little bit trained to be a drummer, not a ton, but my friends to this day are incredible musicians, and I try to meet new ones if I can. So they just let me sort of play along, and so I do the best I can. But since I'm playing with great musicians, it raises my own level. And then I do collect hand drums from all over the world, so I have tons of really cool pieces, and I have a traditional drum set also.
So who's the best rock drummer ever? Settle that for us.
Well, the best ever, or the one I listen to the most? I don't know. I mean, I'm a Dave Grohl person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I like listening to Nirvana and Foo Fighters all the time. So I'm always listening to Dave Grohl, even though sometimes he's singing and not playing drums. But, I like just a lot of classic rock bands and the classic rock songs and good quality stuff. I post a lot of cool stuff. You're going to interview me next time. You can come on anytime. We can talk for hours because we barely got started. But I want to add Glen.
We'll flip it and do that. As far as domains, it's I don't think the game's changed a lot since we started back, you in the 90s and me in the early 2000s, is finding undervalued assets. That's where your appraisal thing, I think, comes in so handy to people. The big mistake I made when I came in is I didn't understand what made a domain a good name. I didn't understand search and how search worked and how that adds value and how much value does it add. I think the biggest mistake people make is that they think it's easy. You just come in and you just start registering stuff. But there's a long learning curve, I think at least a year, maybe two, where you really start understanding that by going to every resource you can find. And then it's a tougher landscape today because there are more competitors. Initially, guys who knew what they were doing, like you, were just like hoovering up everything. But there were about 4 or 5 guys like you operating at the same time who just nailed down so many fantastic domains because you got it before so many other people did. So I think it's a tougher game now because of the competition, but there are always opportunities and niches that you can find, new technologies that come up. And, there are things that people will read science magazines and find out something's coming out in 4 or 5 years, and they've registered domains that go from zero to $20,000 overnight. And for the longest time, you would report, you kept records of how much you paid for a domain, and you could see how much it was sold for. But a lot of those were advanced thinking, where you were looking way down the road for opportunities, because it's harder a lot of times to find the ones that are there at that moment.
Yeah, I only post the good news. I don't post my expenses or my broken code or my broken people or anything like that, or my broken banks.
I think we all kind of have that bias toward the successes, but there are lots of failures in there too. Certainly, I've had them myself, and domains in general. The common rule of thumb is that no matter how big your portfolio is, odds are you're only going to turn over 1 to 2% in a year. So it's way worse than baseball. Yeah, and it's way worse than baseball. Like if you bat 200, you're horrible. That's still 20% success rate. But in domains, you're batting more like 0.20 to be successful.
I mean, I'm a promoter, but ultimately I tell people that it's extraordinarily hard and risky and expensive. But I try to promote the industry truthfully to the best of my ability.
Right.
So anyway, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to message you later about your next visit, and we'll talk again soon.
Certainly been my pleasure. Great to see you, Mike.
Thank you, Ron. Take care. Say hi to Diana.
I will.
Okay. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem, Mike. Nice to put a face to the name.
Absolutely. Sorry, we're running a little late. Ron's got a ton of information. He's actually like a real journalist, was all prepared with a ton of information where, we're not used to that. So I had to cut him off. Unfortunately, I'm going to bring him back soon. I can bring you back anytime, anybody who's good and enjoys visiting. So anyway, I posted a little bit about you on my Facebook, on my live stream. You're welcome to post anything you want. What I like to do with everybody is do their family background, their personal and business background, and then talk about what they're doing today, and then how people watching the stream can get involved and how they should get involved.
Okay, no, excellent. Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to talk with you and everyone watching today. So yeah, my name is Glen Pounder, and as you and probably anyone else can work out, I'm not American. I'm a former British law enforcement officer who's now relocated permanently to the US with my family, so my wife and my 2 boys. Actually, the older one's now a man. He's coming up for 23. And our younger son is 14. Yeah, spent many years in service of Her Majesty the Queen in various UK law enforcement agencies. Honestly, Mike, fighting every type of crime that you can imagine. So you name the type of crime, I've probably helped either myself or with colleagues lock them up for. So probably hundreds of suspects for thousands of years. So
well, I'd like to thank you for everybody you've helped.
Yeah, no, thank you. And
your colleagues. I'm a big supporter of good quality law enforcement, especially nowadays with the rioting in the streets.
Yeah, so it's been a very rewarding ride in my law enforcement years, but obviously also very challenging. And in the last several years, I've been involved in specialist child protection operations, which led me to resigning from the Queen's Service and coming permanently to the US to work at Child Rescue Coalition, which is where I work now as the Chief Operating Officer.
Okay, and that's a 501c3 charity?
It is exactly that. And we've been in operation now 6 years. The technology's been running a little bit longer than that, and it's funny that that Ron there mentioned Napster, because Napster and file sharing networks like it are one of the networks that we monitor for child sexual abuse material. So they're super efficient networks, and of course that means that bad guys use those same networks to trade what we call child sexual abuse material.
On Napster they do?
On the technology that Napster used to use, file sharing networks,
Are they actually owned by somebody? They're sort of amorphous things in the cloud.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And because they're not owned by anyone now, there's no corporate structure. These networks can't be closed down by traditional means. We can't go and knock on the door somewhere and say, this horrific material is going on your network, because it's not a Facebook and it's not, it's not one of the tech companies.
They do have ISPs and IP numbers that somebody's giving them access to the internet.
They absolutely do. And, we'd love in the kind of medium term to work directly with ISPs to say, hey, these IP addresses are trading child abuse material right now today on your network. We don't have those contacts right now. We provide technology free to law enforcement worldwide, which allows them to locate and identify and arrest people trading this child abuse material, and as we've seen in thousands of cases, rescue children as well.
Well, I want to get into this in some more detail, and then we're going to go back to your background, because I'm going out of order, but this is important information. So let's just, I'm just trying to break down what's happening here. You guys have some software and some tools, and then if you have a relationship with law enforcement agencies around the world, they can adopt your software and your tools onto their platforms?
Yeah, exactly that. So what happens, Mike, is that they attend a 3-day training course. So it has to be licensed law enforcement investigators. Like I say, in many countries around the world now, we now have 96 countries operating the technology that we provide free to them as part of our non-501c3 status. And after they've conducted this 3-day training, actually during the course they start their own investigation. So by day 3, they're actually investigating a real target in their jurisdiction. So a cop in Florida,
the software can always constantly identify people everywhere.
Absolutely. So a cop in Florida sees targets in Florida. A cop in France.
There are probably a lot in Florida, but let me ask you, what about the places that aren't covered by law enforcement or software?
Yeah, so and that's one of our, I'll be honest with you, that's one of our big concerns. So we're always looking to expand our technology, because again, in the tech world, if you're not moving forward, you're really slipping backwards quickly, right?
So what's the largest region that doesn't have any coverage?
In the tech space, or do you mean a jurisdiction?
The largest geography that doesn't have any law enforcement on this sort of thing?
Well, obviously it's difficult for us. We try not to call out countries by saying they're not using our technology, but you can think of countries like China and places like that where we don't have any footprint at all.
So is there a model to have a footprint in China?
There's not right now. I mean, we do have contacts with Interpol and organizations like that. So we present.
Which is the next one in line that's realistic to put yours or your competitors' type of process in place?
In terms of countries we have lined up right now, a good example is Morocco.
So if I wanted to help you get this done in Morocco, what would I need to do?
If you can cure COVID first, that would be a good starting point.
Well, let's pretend pretend that these people have vaccines that are going to work, and COVID's going to be gone in 6 months.
Yeah, so we have a plan then for Morocco and some neighboring countries. So for Morocco, we did what we call a workshop, a 1-day workshop to sensitize not just law enforcement, of course, because it needs the judiciary. So we sensitized law enforcement and the judiciary to the problem as we see it in Morocco and the leads that we could provide them. So we saw it really as a 2-step process. They see the technology and understand the level of risk they're dealing with, and then they say, yes, we can integrate the technology.
How can the people watching this broadcast help you cover additional regions?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is please head to our webpage, childrescuecoalition.org. Obviously, we are a 501, so we do look for donations, but we also provide some really good educational tips, which are all free on the website, so that people can, look at ways in which they can protect their devices, for example, the settings on their devices, making sure that
devices from what?
Well, for example, bad guys will go on social media and look for certain hashtags. So if you put baby bath time next to a photo that you're sending out on social media, that's the kind of thing that bad guys, unfortunately, will be looking for, and they will zone in on indicative hashtags. So I'd encourage people.
Why do I care if they come to my site?
Well, if your watchers are putting pictures of their kids online,
oh yeah,
then bad guys can find kids using those.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right, I got you.
So
yeah, put pictures of my kids online.
Absolutely, bath time is way out. You see what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, we all have our social networks, but I would just encourage people to be careful what they put out there. And I'll tell you one other thing, Mike, because you won't hear what I'm going to say next very often. Everything you read in the press and everything I see regularly, it's the big tech companies' fault, and strangers are the ones abusing your kids online. And don't get me wrong, that does happen. Grooming happens online, and that's true. Unfortunately, evidence shows that the majority of kids who are abused are already in the circle of trust. So it's your gym coaches, your teachers, parents, uncles. So, it's not.
That goes without saying. I mean, because they're the only people that can get near them theoretically.
Exactly. But, I'm 49 now. So when I got home when I was 12 and I was safe in my bedroom, I was safe. But of course, now going into the bedroom for a 12-year-old is going into the Wild West if they're going on the internet.
I mean, just for your knowledge, for like at least a year, I was like a hitchhiking teenager, runaway, throwaway kid, like hitchhiking around. So all sorts of freaks like picked me up. Luckily, I was an excellent escape artist.
You dodged the bullet, Mike, and as you know, that's where kids can end up being trafficked when they've gone into those situations, run away from home.
I have to say, though, I am traumatized because I can remember tons of different instances. Luckily, I was never successfully abused, but I mean, I was exposed to a bunch of horrific like predators, though.
Yeah.
So I know what you're talking about, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's horrendous because there's no magic bullet for this, and there's so many different types of offenders as well. So like I say, I don't want to lessen the fact that there is grooming online going on right now as we're talking. Bad guys are in gaming rooms and other places where they will form a relationship with the child pretty quickly. And so when a child is told, be careful who you talk to strangers online, well, they don't regard that engagement.
They're not a stranger.
Exactly, because they've been groomed.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Well, does the website have a lot of information about this also?
Yeah, you can find tips on our education page at childrescuecoalition.org.
Yeah, so post some more links. I'll post some more links as well, but you can post stuff on my wall anytime. Okay. I'll share it with people and tell them how to get involved. Let me, since I jumped ahead, you're telling me more about your background from England, and then you got this job opportunity here and moved your family here. Is that or did? Yeah, so I was I started in British Customs actually investigation way back in the late 80s. And again, this speaks to how quickly the technology's changed, and legislation doesn't keep up with technology. Okay, so when I started in customs, the first case I was involved in, which was the transportation of child sexual abuse material, was across the UK border on a VHS tape. Now, you and I might remember those, right? But in that time, since the mid-90s, obviously with the explosion of the internet, that particular bad guy doesn't need to figure out a way of finding who might send him a VHS tape. So my first experience of that was that way back in the 90s. But my career has been a mixture of investigation and intelligence roles in the UK, but overseas as well. So one of my roles overseas was in Portugal back in 2003, between 2003 and 2009. And so obviously I was there for 6 years. So if we want to speak Portuguese, we could do that as well. But one of the horrific cases I was involved in there was a child that went missing. Her name was Madeleine McCann.
she made pretty much worldwide news. So she went missing effectively on my watch. So that case is going to follow me around forever, Mike, because until she's found or we get some resolution, that's going to be, it's bad days for me. But
explain to me how this is on your watch. I know that case. I mean, I've seen that on TV a bunch of times. It's always bothered me.
Absolutely. So I was the British liaison officer in Portugal. So all law enforcement liaison cases, intel, things that were going on in Portugal.
Well, it happened right, but you weren't the law enforcement in Portugal, though. But you were trying to deal with it after the fact, you're saying?
No, while it was happening, because of course it's effectively like.
But I mean, it was like too late, basically, after by the time you heard about it or knew any. I mean, it wasn't your jurisdiction to monitor Portugal.
No, but what happens, Mike, is that the FBI called this role an attaché. So I was the British attaché. So only a few months before Madeleine was taken, we had a paedophile in the Algarve in Portugal, just a few miles down the road. He was wanted in the UK. We managed to work with the Portuguese law enforcement and identify him, have him arrested and extradited back to the UK. So that's the type of case we would get involved in as liaison. We'd be working directly with Portuguese law enforcement. So of course, when Madeleine went missing, one of the first phone calls was from the Portuguese to me to say,
I understand.
Here's what we've got. We need to run criminal checks on everybody we can identify and figure out who might be the one who's done this horrific crime.
Wow. You certainly didn't commit the crime, so don't take it personally. I'm sure you're doing the best you can do.
Yeah. So I mean, it was, as you can imagine, it became a full-time job. So I was involved in the first 10 days for 21 hours a day, more or less. But
I forgot the latest, but I thought I'd seen a recent thing where I thought they had zoned in on somebody.
In Germany, they have a suspect, I believe, who very much fits what my personal opinion was that happened at the time, which was potentially that
he was there a few miles away, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like is he the guy? I mean, you think?
Personally, I think that fits very well with what may have happened, because where she was very dark, and even at 9 o'clock at night, it would have been quite easy, unfortunately, for somebody to get into that apartment and take Madeleine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fault of the predator. It would be nice if the child was better protected, but there's millions of children.
Right, exactly. But all that to say, obviously, but I'm going to carry that case with me. I can't help it. It's just the way I am, right? And when I went back from Portugal to the UK, I went back into a field office, so helping to run one of the regional field offices for the Serious and Organised Crime Agency, which eventually became the National Crime Agency in the UK, which is a bit like a mixture of FBI, DEA, Homeland Security in one agency. And I was fortunate enough to be selected to be posted to the States, back over here in Florida, in Miami, to the British consulate. So I was posted back to the States in 2012. So I did 5 years in the US, again, as an attaché. So
do they make you like cool little devices like James Bond?
I couldn't confirm or deny that on this. No, absolutely not. It's very much, it's weird because, of course, only in the UK could I make arrests. I couldn't make arrests in the US because I didn't have my powers here. But by working closely with partners, you can have a real huge impact, much more than I would have had in the UK. So
I'm thinking James Bond wasn't following the treaties perfectly.
Not quite, not so much.
Well, let me ask you in conclusion, just you mentioned, I think, Morocco. What are some other countries that you think you'll be able to uncover with your technology in the near future, and how can people help you?
Yeah, so I'm hoping, just to finish off on North Africa, we're hoping for Algeria. Taiwan is a potential in the medium term as well. And, some of this is what we try to do to say, hey, this technology will help you rescue kids, because we already know that from the thousands of cases that have taken place using our technology. But sometimes, it's more about
that's why it's just, if you don't cover the whole globe, the predators would keep moving. So in my mind, you got to cover the whole globe.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, depending on the country, there's not always dedicated resources. Like where we are in the US, there's a network called the ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children. So each state has dedicated resources for child protection.
Yeah.
But that's not happening in every country around the world. So some of it is literally starting from scratch to say, hey guys, you can't have this left now with your postal service, because VHS tapes is not the way it works anymore. It has to be a dedicated resource. And I know some countries, and I'd rather not name them, where child protection is still with a postal service, and that's from back in the 90s, where well, it was coming through the post. And in the US, it used to be US Postal Service was responsible, right?
I mean, it is a problem that, the technology keeps advancing, and we know people use porn and worse with their technology, terrorism and child exploitation, et cetera. So, the enforcement has to keep up with the technology forever. There's really no other choice.
It is that. And again, a Child Rescue Coalition, we are hyper aware of that right now, and we're working on some new technology to move into different areas of the internet where the bad guys move, because we have to move with them. And if that's where the exploitation is taking place, well, then we need to build technology for law enforcement that's going to help them. Because again, I worked for a major UK agency, but let's say they had this technology, they use it in the UK, but they wouldn't be able to say, okay, we can give this technology to France, to Brazil, where we as a non-profit can say, yeah, the decision's made, it's done. We don't have to think, well, our agency built this, can we give it to a foreign country? We don't work like that. We give it free to all law enforcement everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I'd be happy to talk to you more about this, and my group Make Change Trust is going to help you. But just in general, I know a ton of really smart technology people all over the world that do great things and write great software and build great companies and charities. So I don't know if any of them could help you, or I don't know enough about your network or whatever, but we'll talk about it again soon, and you can come back whenever on the live stream and update people on what's going on and how they can participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll need to clear it with my CEO, but if it's interesting for you guys to take another further glimpse down this rabbit hole, then we'd be happy to come back on and maybe do a little bit of a demo, which is, it can be quite disturbing, but obviously we wouldn't show any illegal material.
Yeah, no, obviously. Well, there's a lot of technology people watch my stuff, so we'd be happy to do that. You can think about what you want to do on the next broadcast when you come on.
Awesome. No, that'd be great.
Oh, well, thank you on behalf of everybody in the world and myself and our live stream audience for everything you're doing and for visiting with us. And there's a permanent recording on YouTube that anybody can share and look back at what you're doing and your mission. And my commitment to help you is recorded right here. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. And thanks to Make Change Trust for the support as well, because we think those videos will be very useful.
Cool. Thank you so much, Glenn. Good luck with everything, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. So two great guests like usual. It's amazing how well this has gone so far. Done this like 16 times or so about 30 guests. A couple times we only had one guest. So really excited that we've made all these awesome recordings of all these great people. Charity and business leaders, domain leaders, and a bunch of smart, crazy people, all sorts of different personalities. Glen and Ron are very buttoned up. This has been a very, adult-like, conservative broadcast so far. So now we're going to loosen things up with domain name appraising, which we started earlier on, and we're going to jam up some more. You guys put some good domains up on my list here. I'm going to check that out. If you have any other great domains, you put a bunch of bad domains on here too. So OTAR, you're going to get dumped if you keep putting those on there. I'm going to go back up to the beginning. We already praised mindinitiative.com for Hazrat and went through the process. That one's $10,000. I'm going to use tires.com for Howard Levy. I have to share my screen again to get this thing going. So we're going to do that right now. Okay. I don't know if I feel like we did used tires before. I don't know. Anyway, used tires sounds dangerous. We know what used tires are, and presumably we're going to use the default in our minds for car tires. So again, we're disambiguating it. Used car tires sounds like a dangerous profession, but obviously there's a lot of it. In Deerfield Beach, usedtires.com. Hey, that's interesting. They must be reading my geography. When I do this with you guys, I should probably turn off my geography so it gives a more generic results, because Google knows my geography and it gives results weighted in my neighborhood. You can see a bunch of Fort Lauderdale stuff here. In any event, we know what used tires are. And then the issue is the breadth, how many people might sell used tires. Not so familiar with that. And then who might give you the most money for it. That would be the depth. We've disambiguated it. We're doing the breadth and the depth. Breadth is any tire dealer who deals in used tires, which I wasn't so familiar with. Looks like a lot of people, certainly in Florida. And don't ask me why, it sounds dangerous. But in any event, used tires and then the depth, well, there's a lot of money on cars and tires and automotive products. This is a pretty tight fit. It's perfect context for the subject matter, used tires. So it's a really good name, easy to spell. It's pretty short. It's impossible to get wrong. You could tell your friend, go to usedtires.com, and they'll probably spell it without the D and type in used tires. But that's irrelevant because that name would be worthless. So in any case, how do we figure out the price of this thing? It's a guess, but in my case, I've done more appraisals and more domain sales than anybody. So my guess is the best guesstimate. So used tires, I'd say it's a big market space. It's worth $25,000. I wouldn't drive on one, but it looks like there's a big market for it and it's a good domain name. So $25,000 is a fair price. And again, I always sell these things at a discount because I need the cash flow. So presumably the owner would sell it at a discount if they needed the money. So I'll do bindle.com, that Ryder put on for us. I gotta see how he spelled it actually. Bindle is a bag or a sack. Very exciting. Okay, so first of all, disambiguation. What is it? It's a bag or sack or carrying device. Huckleberry Finn comes to mind here. And me hitchhiking as a teenager, although I didn't actually use one of these. I had my Mickey Mouse backpack. Not really. So we know what it is ostensibly. We'll look at some pictures to make sure we got it right. Really is this thing on the end of a stick. I don't know why it has to be, but there's these dudes, Bindle Bros. So it's some kind of brand they're using for whatever, their show, their blog. Looks like they're the highest depth, the biggest likely buyer, which even though they might not be the buyer, it should be priced as if they were the buyer conceptually. This looks like a popular looking branded thing, Bindle Life in a Bottle. They put it on the bottle. Again, in the real world where I had more time, I'd research all these things in more detail. I'd have a bunch of tools and I'd have people help me. This is bindleandkeep.com. So again, they're using the word bindle spelled properly. It's short. No, I didn't know how to spell it. It is easy to spell. It's just not a super common word, but Bindle bottle, that's probably that bottle we saw. So the thing looks pretty cool. So Bindle, the dictionary word, relatively easy to spell. There are brands already that exist with it. It's a short word. Anybody could start a new brand and call it Bindle. This could be, if you make it contextual to your brand, to your company. You can make a movie called Bindle about Huckleberry Finn, I suppose. You could sell really expensive leather bags called Bindle. So there you have it. Bindle's a cool thing. And again, it's just about making up a price. There's no correct answer to this, but given that it's so contextual and short, it's a very powerful concept there. So Bindle.com is worth 50,000. Congratulations. Do a handful more and let you guys go enjoy the beach. If you're not near a beach, get in your car or get on the plane. Let's see here. You guys put a bunch of crappy ones, so I'm going to skip those and look for a couple new ones, good ones. Where am I here? Just one sec, please. Okay, Ryder has thins.com, THINS. Otar has keyword blueprint. Stephen has 2VI. So I'll try to do some of those. Let's start with 2VI. It's kind of a weird one, but that's what appraising domains is about. It's weird, and we have to figure out what they're worth so we can sell them or delete them. It'd be hard to imagine wanting to delete such a short, cool sounding name. It's 2VI. It's kind of weird, but it's just 3 letters, and VI, 2VI could be to the Virgin Islands. That's what I'd use it for. I just told you guys to get on a plane and go to the beach. Next thing we appraised was 2VI, to the Virgin Islands. See how that works? And then you have your W9 2VI. That's terribly exciting. Not. There's a few different things going on with 2VI, but I think the point is you could start something new, but it's not terribly meaningful and contextual. If it was actually 3 letters and not without any number, it would be really valuable. Most likely, depending on what those letters are, the V isn't a great letter to use because there aren't a terribly high number of things that use V in their initials. But again, we see here the US Virgin Islands. So 2VI really, what does it mean? It means to the Virgin Islands. The breadth is travel companies that go back and forth to the Virgin Islands who could use hundreds of other potential travel domains. The depth is nothing because nobody really needs it, but it is cool and it is short and it is 3 letters. So what is 2VI.com worth? $3,000. Cool. Guys are great. Great. We're going to do a few more here. Hopefully I have some more tea so I don't fall asleep on you. Keywordblueprint.com from Otar. Keyword Blueprint, 4,800 results in Google. This is a highly focused expression around the search engine optimization experience, which is something I'm familiar with as the owner of SEO.com Corporation. And keyword blueprint's actually an important and valuable thing theoretically, but there's a bunch of other ways of saying it. And not only that, there aren't many people that trade in that expression at all. So what does it mean? It's sort of a way of describing your model, your plan for search engine optimization to get at the top of Google. So these persuasion work people are really good with keyword blueprinting and search engine optimization. And the way I know that is because they're at the top of the results. They're the best with the whole search engine optimization experience when it comes to keyword blueprint keyword. Keeping in mind, there's just so many other ways of saying it. Keyword blueprinting, keyword blueprints, keyword, there's 10 other ways of saying that, whatever they are. We could use a thesaurus or look up common expressions, which we don't have time for at the moment. Google Ads negative keyword blueprint, keyword research. So what does it mean? We kind of know what it means around search engine optimization. So it's a very specialized expression and there's a lot of ways of saying it. The breadth is any search engine optimization firm app, which would include myself theoretically, since I own one. And the depth is 0 because nobody really needs it for anything. It's kind of long and it's not a popular expression. There's too many other ways of saying it. There's a lot of search engine optimization companies, but they buy domains for really cheap or not at all, generally speaking. Not likely this name's going to receive a lot of demand. So there you have it. Keyword blueprint.com 2000. I always end up in this like zone of $2,000 and $3,000 domains. I like doing more expensive ones, but although we did do some more expensive ones, you know, already today, bindle.com, for example. All right, I'll do a couple more and let you guys off the hook. Go to VI, to the Virgin Islands. Ryder has thins.com, thins.com. Check that out. Thins, okay, there's these wheat thins, good thins, so it's food, ostensibly. Well, it really is food. Well, hey, that's awesome. Okay, so what does it mean? It means any food that's thin. Turns out there's a bunch of multi-billion-dollar corporations that trade in food that's thin for thin people, right? Hey, you won't believe this. I'm actually getting a call from St. Thomas. I've just been sitting here talking about the Virgin Islands for the last 10 minutes. And I have a call on caller ID that says St. Thomas. I don't know anybody in St. Thomas at the moment, so it's an interesting coincidence that the spammers in the Virgin Islands, they need a domain name. With respect to Thins, that's a much better name than I expected because, again, these are huge corporations here. Nabisco and Reese's Corporation, Blue Diamond Corporation. These guys have billions of dollars and they're selling things called Thins. So Thins are food is the disambiguation. You could use it in other industries, but we see that this is clearly the most popular one. Also, make sure you never eat this thing. Egg thins with cauliflower. That's absolutely disgusting. Those people should immediately be arrested by the new administration. I can't even believe somebody invented that. How heinous. So in any event, let's see if these things are any good. I'm getting hungry. Sandwich thins, these look good. So thins are food. Again, these companies are huge. Nabisco, stoned people sell thins. There's wheat thins. A lot of these are Nabisco knows that the word thins implies, you know, for thin people or people that want to be thin. So again, it's a trick to put that on your cookies. These are all cookies, crackers and cookies, thin, 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 because hey, thin is in. I mean, Oreo thins, what kind of scam is that? You just eat 10 times as many of them. Does that really make you thin? Thin potato chips. So it's just a scam. This is what's with these cauliflower thin people? They're trying to like torture us. Well, there's an awesome name. So the breadth is that any food corporation or anybody inventing new gym-related, health-related things could use that name. You could use it as an acronym and make up any company name. It's a great name in the dictionary, easy to say, easy to spell, has a lot of meaning, a lot of depth. These huge corporations use that word. And I'm hungry. I guess we have to do an appraisal. So the price of this thing is thins.com, which I owned that one. We're going to say 60,000 is a fair price. Good job. Last one. Hope you guys put something good up there for me. Definitely put a lot of bad ones. We have Miami Property Brokers. It's a cool name, but it's not that valuable. A lot of property stuff. Massager MT. Repowering. That sounds pretty cool. To donate food. Okay, we're going to try repowering.com. So it's probably not that valuable, but hopefully I'm wrong. This is the last one. Thank you guys so much for visiting with me. Again, with respect to repowering, first, what does it mean? It has something to do with recharging wind turbines. So that's good. It actually means something. So we're onto something here. Probably more valuable than I expected. Repowering wind farm sites. It sounds like maybe they're not profitable. They have to do something else, replacing older power stations with newer ones. Well, there you have it. So we know what it means. Siemens Energy, multi-billion-dollar corporation. So the breadth is anybody in the solar, wind energy, alternative energy space, which aren't that many people, but the people that are in there are very profitable and very large. And the depth is, it's pretty cool. It looks like a popular word, 800,000 results in Google. Ton of crazy stuff going on here in the Google imaging. So it's actually a really great name. So Repowering London on Twitter. So this is awesome, repowering schools. So again, this is the whole point of domain investing, and I'm glad we got to end on this note. As I looked at this name, it sounded kind of bad, and it turns out it's great. I'm happy about that, other than the fact that I don't own it. So again, we know what it means. We know the depth, the breadth, and the depth of it, and we have to come up with a price, which isn't that simplistic. But considering the size of these companies, and that it's also includes schools and various different spaces, these people are investing millions and billions of dollars, big corporations. And I barely did any research, and I already found a bunch of relevant information context. So we're going to go high on the pricing of repowering.com, and we'll go for 50,000. And thank you guys very much for another awesome day. My guests, Ron and Glenn, were fabulous. I'm so blessed and thankful for them and for you guys. We're going to save this broadcast forever. Encourage you to watch it and share it. And join me again on our next broadcast. Thank you guys so much. Peace to you. Have a nice day.